The fire has gone out. All that's left is a low orange hush in the coals, the kind that barely holds back the night. You lie still beneath a blanket that isn't yours. It smells of someone else's sweat, someone else's battles, someone else's story. But tonight, none of that matters. Because tonight, you fall asleep in the year 1312. Somewhere beyond the stone walls, a rooster stirs too early. Somewhere, a knight rolls over in his feather mattress. But not you. You're still in the corner, pressed against hay that itches and bites, next to a bucket that was supposed to be emptied yesterday. Tonight, you are not the hero. You are not the chosen. You are not the one with the sword. You are the boy who sharpens it. The one who carries the armor but never wears it. Who wakes first and sleeps last. Who bows too low, runs too fast, and swallows every insult with the same nod. Because one day they tell you it might be your turn. But it once should be. Not really. So breathe in slowly. Let the dust settle in your lungs like it always does. Feel the rough wool on your skin, the cold that never leaves your toes, and the ache in your arms that hasn't gone away since the last winter. Because this is your life now. Close your eyes and step quietly into the day. You wake up to the sound of something gnawing. Not loudly, just the soft, deliberate scrape of teeth on wood. It's not the first time. It never is. You've gotten good at guessing which corner the rat is in. This one's under the bench, beside the broken leg of the tool shed door. The same spot it always chooses when the weather turns. The straw beneath you is wet again. Not soaked. Just damp in the same way old sadness is damp. The kind that seeps in over time and never fully dries. You shift your leg slightly and feel it squish under your calf. Cold and sour and oddly familiar. It smells of mildew, piss, and the sweat of boys who came before you. This is your bed. Not a chamber. Not a cot. Not even a mat. Just this corner of the storage room where old boots and dull blades get tossed, and squires who haven't proven themselves yet are allowed to exist. You've tried making it better. Rearranged the straw. Stolen a spare tunic to use as a pillow. Folded your own clothes under your back to dull the stone. None of it worked. The floor finds your spine like a promise, and the cold finds your bones like a debt. There's a crack in the wall above your head, just wide enough to let the wind through. In winter, the air whistles at you. In spring, it's just damp silence. Last summer, a wasp nested in the crack. You didn't tell anyone. Let it stay. It was the only guest you had that month. You're not the only one sleeping here, but it feels like it. The others, the older squires, get better spaces. Slightly. At least they sleep near the hearth. You can hear them breathing sometimes, soft and deep, like they've learned to dream past the cold. You haven't. Not yet. The walls don't keep the sound out. You hear the night's dogs snoring on the other side, curled on their own furs by the fire. They probably don't even know your name. You're the boy who fills their bowl, the one who got bitten last week for stepping too close. Your fingers curl around the edge of your tunic. It's still stiff from yesterday's mud. You'd planned to rinse it. Forgot. Again. You think about peeling it off, but that would just mean sleeping with your bare back on the straw. You keep it on. There's something stuck to your foot. You don't look. Might be a beetle. Might be one of the crushed peas you dropped last night, sweeping the hall while the knights drank mead and threw bones at each other's heads. One of them laughed so hard he pissed in a bucket and knocked it over. You mopped that up too. You blink. Darkness hasn't lifted. Just thinned slightly. The kind of darkness that hints at a gray dawn, not a golden one. The castle doesn't glow when the sun rises. It groans. Wood creaks. Rats retreat. Chamber pots are carried out by boys like you. The day begins not with glory, but with grunts and frostbitten toes. Your toes are always cold. You've wrapped them, tried rubbing them, even stuffed a shred of cloth in each boot once, and were whipped for stealing from the linen pile. The boots don't fit anyway. Hand-me-downs from a page who outgrew them 2 years ago. Leather cracked, soles soft as pudding. You'd walk better barefoot, but appearances matter, and squire boots must be worn, even if they bleed. Your fingers find a sliver in your thumb. You don't pull it. It's been there 3 days. It's not infected. Yet, you've been waiting for it to swell. That way maybe someone will notice. Maybe you'll be excused from grooming the horses. Just for a day. Maybe. But they once set notice, and you still do it anyway. Because the night expects it. The one you serve. The one whose face you try not to look at too long. He doesn't hit hard, not always. Just enough. Enough to remind you that your place is beneath his shadow. You shine his armor. You fetch his wine. You carry his burdens and he carries his name. And you carry silence. The first thing you learn as a squire is how to be invisible. How to fold yourself into the background of another man's legend. How to smile when your stomach cramps. How to bow without sighing. How to bite the inside of your cheek until you taste iron but never let the pain show on your face. Because this is your training. Not swordplay, not honor, not chivalry. Those come later, if ever. First you must learn to disappear. To sleep like a ghost. To rise like a shadow. To endure without voice, without thanks, without warmth. You curl your legs tighter. There's a whisper of movement above you, mice in the thatching, or maybe a bat. One flew in last week and got tangled in the drapes. You heard the lady scream. It was the most exciting thing to happen that day. They burned the drapes afterward. You swept the ashes. You wonder if the bat found a better place to sleep. You let your head rest back against the stone. Let the cold press into your scalp like a warning. You imagine it's snowing outside, or raining, or sunny. It doesn't matter. You won't see the sky for hours. Not until the night calls, or someone spills something, or the dogs shit indoors again. You hear footsteps, not close, somewhere in the great hall, probably a cook, or a guard. Their boots echo like bells in a tune. You wish they wouldn't. You were almost asleep again. But you aren't said aloud dreams just yet. You scratch at the back of your neck. Something crawls there. Or maybe it's nothing. You're too tired to check. This is where you sleep. Among straw and rust and the constant reminder that you are not yet important, not yet worthy, not yet anything. But maybe if you close your eyes now, and stay very still, you can borrow a moment from someone else's dream. And maybe now you can finally sleep. You don't first wake up. Not exactly. You're scraped awake, slowly, unpleasantly, like rust being peeled off iron. A hand-me-down dawn pries its gray fingers into the stone walls, and you feel it in your bones before you see it in the sky. Cold light, like the glow of bad milk, spills in through the crack above your head. The air has changed, not warmer, just more aware of you, like the castle knows it's time to stir and wants to make sure you don't enjoy it. Your body aches like it forgot how to be soft. You slept on your side too long. Your hip grinds into the stone through straw that thinned out sometime in the night. There's a line pressed into your cheek from a nail jutting out of the wall. You don't even touch it anymore. What's the point? Your knees crack as you uncurl them. Not because you're old, you're barely more than a boy, but because this is what kneeling on stone every day does. What shoveling ash, polishing boots, bending at the waist until your spine hums, every hour, every day does. Your fingers don't want to move yet. They cling to the shape they held while you slept, curled like frightened beetles. You flex them slowly. One pops. It's not satisfying, it's just a reminder. Your first breath tastes of mildew, smoke, and the piss from the bucket that no one emptied again. Probably you, probably today. You sit up slowly, not because you're tired, though you are, but because standing too fast makes your vision go white at the edges. You learned that lesson the hard way. You still remember the sound your forehead made when it met the beam. It echoed like shame. You don't get to stretch. The moment you're upright, the work begins. No yawn, no scratch, no quiet moment of morning peace, just cold feet on colder stone, and the knowledge that if you're not fast, someone else will take your task and blame you anyway. You reach for your boots. They're still wet from yesterday. You can't remember from what. Mud? Horse urine? Mead sloshed from a night's feast? You slip them on, toes curling at the cold. They don't fit. They never have. Your heels blister against the back, but you've grown used to it. The pain is less of a scream now, more like a grumble, background noise, like hunger. Your tunic smells of grease. You forgot to scrub it after tending the cooking fires. There's a burn hole near the sleeve. You cover it with your arm and pray no one notices. You stand. You sway. You pretend it was on purpose. The first task is always the haul. You don't need to be told. No one wakes you. No one needs to. The castle itself does the telling. The groan of beams, the sigh of wind through the gaps, the smell of extinguished torches and old breath. You shuffle toward the great hall, steps stiff and sore, like your feet forgot how to forgive you overnight. The hall is silent but not peaceful. Tables half covered in bones and grease from last night's feast. Bread crusts ground into the floor by boots that stomped without thought. Spilled mead drying into sticky puddles that glisten like amber in the pale morning light. You fetch the rag. The same one. Always the same one. It used to be white. Now it's brown, stiff, and smells of too many meals and not enough soap. You drop to your knees, again, and start to scrub. Your palms burn. There's a smear of something you can't name. You don't want to name it. You scrape it up with the edge of your sleeve and move on. Halfway through wiping a spilled bowl of something reddish, maybe wine, maybe not, you hear the boots. Leather, sharp, measured, too clean to be one of yours. A night. You don't look up. Looking up gets you noticed. Notice gets you questions. Questions get you wrong answers, and wrong answers get you bruises. You keep scrubbing, slower, quieter. The boots stop behind you, then move on. You exhale. The cook's boy stumbles in next, barefoot and filthy, holding a pot bigger than his head. He grunts at you, and you nod. You're not friends. You're not enemies. You're just awake at the same time. You finish the hall just as the dogs appear. 2 of them, big, shaggy. They snarl playfully at each other, then piss directly on the corner you just scrubbed. One looks at you like it's done you a favor. You don't instead cry. You used to, but that was when you were newer, softer, still holding on to some secret belief that someone would come and say, "Well done, lad." They didn't. They won't. The dogs bark at a shadow, probably yours. You move on to the next task. Ashes from the hearth must be cleaned. Armor hung to dry. Water fetched. Buckets emptied. Urine tossed from the windows without splashing back on your boots. If you're lucky. If not, it's another wet walk. You carry the piss bucket out like it's sacred, because if you spill it, it becomes your punishment. You whisper a curse to yourself as you walk, not out of anger, but ritual, the same words every morning, words you invented that sound ancient. It sets how you stay sane. Out in the courtyard, the sky is iron gray. It presses down, not with rain, but with weight, like the heavens themselves want to remind you they're watching, and that they're not on your side. A stable hand nods at you. You nod back. He's 12, missing 2 fingers. Still thinks he'll ride a horse one day. You don't tell him otherwise. Let him dream. You empty the bucket into the trench. The wind shifts. You take a step back just in time. A victory. A small one. You cling to it. Back inside, the night is stirring. You hear him before you see him. The grunt of a man who's never carried his own armor. The groan of a bed frame too fine for your weight. The bark of his voice when he remembers he exists and expects the world to accommodate him. You rush to his chambers. He throws a boot at you before you knock. You catch it midair. Another small victory. He laughs. You smile too wide, and he waves you off like a servant, which of course you are. You kneel to help him dress. You avert your eyes. You don't breathe too deeply. The floor is colder in here. That's the irony. The nicer the room, the colder the stone. But no one mentions it. They just cover it with rugs, thick, rich, wool rugs that you'll never step on without permission. He complains about the buckle. You fix it. He complains about the seam. You nod. He complains about his hangover. You apologize. You didn't pour the wine, but you are the one who exists. That sep's enough. He slaps your shoulder on the way out. You flinch, though it doesn't hurt. Not really. Not anymore. The morning has begun, and you are already behind. The fire needs tending. The horse needs brushing. The sword needs oiling. Your fingers already ache. You take a breath. Another one. You tell yourself it's up is almost midday. It isn't sup. But the lie is warm. And maybe now, you can move again. You don't yet wear your uniform. It wears you. It scratches, pinches, drags at your shoulders like a punishment stitched into cloth. You don't remember when it was last cleaned. You don't even know what clean feels like anymore. All you know is that the linen is stiff, where it should bend, thin where it should protect, and somehow always damp, even when the sun is out. The tunic is brown, Or it used to be, now it's the color of old broth. It clings to you like a wet rag during summer and hardens like bark when winter settles in. There's a hole under the left arm. You tuck your elbow in when the steward passes. You've done it so often, it's become a natural pose. Your body learned shame before it learned rest. The belt sags no matter how tight you pull it. Once, the leather snapped during chapel, and your trousers dropped halfway down your thighs. The knight laughed so hard he spat on the altar. You laughed too. What else could you do? Cry in front of a bishop. You wear wool over linen. It's the rule. Layers, they say. Trap warmth. But you know better. They trap sweat, lice, and the faint stink of mildew that never leaves your collar. The wool itches your neck raw. You scratch until it bleeds. Then pretend not to. You have exactly 2 sets of clothes. One is for when the knight wants to look presentable. You wear it when you carry his banner through the village. You march behind him as he waves to the poor, smelling like lavender oil and lies. That tunic is darker, less threadbare but not yours. It belonged to another squire. He died, you think. No one tells you these things. His name is still sewn into the hem. You haven't taken it out. The second set is your everyday garb, the one with the knee patched by candle wax after you ripped it tripping over a flagstone. The one that never quite dries even after 2 days near the kitchen hearth. The one you wrap around yourself each night, even though it smells like horses in regret. You try to keep your boots clean. You fail. They were never your size, and the left sole has peeled at the toe. You keep it tied with a strip of old rope. It's frayed now. You'll find another if you're lucky. Or just walk funny, which you already do. Your gait has the limp of someone twice your age. Not from injury, but from years of being made to run, fetch, kneel, and carry. You tried to stitch your own cloak once, found a discarded wool sheet by the stables, cut it with your eating knife, and tied it at the neck with a broken bridle strap. You wore it proudly. The knight called it peasant's pride and made you take it off. He gave it to his dog. The dog pissed on it. You laughed again. Not because it was funny, because it was expected. Your underclothes are the worst. They're never warm, never clean, never dry. You've taken to skipping them when you can. Less fabric means fewer lice. That's your logic. Even if it means your thighs chafe during long marches. Even if it means your skin stays raw all winter. You learned how to rub ash in the rashes. It helps. A little. The squire's uniform is supposed to mark you as noble adjacent. You stir not noble, just adjacent. You're dressed to be seen but never noticed. Just enough thread to show loyalty. Just enough color to reflect the house. Just enough shame to keep you quiet. There's a crest stitched on the chest of your tunic. A lion, maybe. Or a boar. You can't remember. You see it every day and still forget. It means nothing to you, but everything to the knight. You press it flat every morning, even when the rest of you is crooked. You spit on your fingers to smooth it. You hope he notices. He never does. Once you tore it. Just a little. Caught it on a nail while reaching for a saddle. The knight saw. He didn't speak. Just held your wrist and pressed the torn crest against your face until the linen scratched your nose raw. He whispered something about honor. About disgrace. You remember the pressure more than the words. You never tore it again. Sometimes you envy the pages. They're younger, dirtier, but free in a way you're not. Their tunics are shapeless, their feet often bare, and they still believe someone will rescue them. You know better. Your uniform is your cage. The moment you put it on, you stop being a child, became something in between. Not a knight, not a boy, just a shadow in borrowed clothes. You tried to repair the seams last week, with horsehair and stubborn fingers. You poked yourself 7 times, bled on the sleeve. You spit on it and rubbed it clean with the straw. Now there's a stiff patch that crunches when you move. You say nothing. You don't complain anymore. Complaints are like rats. They breed in silence and get you punished when they crawl out. You wear the same clothes through seasons. In summer, you sweat through the linen, the wool sticking like tar. In winter, you double wrap the sleeves and keep your arms crossed. You learn to tuck your hands into the crook of your elbows, trapping heat like a secret. Some nights it works. Some nights you dream of silk. Not because you want to wear it, you wouldn't know what to do with it, but because you've heard it doesn't itch. You wonder what that feels like. The only time your clothes come off is when you bathe. Rare cold, forced. You scrub yourself with sand and freezing water, watched by other squires who laugh when you shiver. The knight's garments are washed weekly, yours when they start to smell worse than the latrine. Even then you wash them yourself. There's a place behind the stables, a shallow stream thick with moss and frogs. You kneel in it with a stone and beat the tunic against rock like it's done something wrong. It doesn't get cleaner, just wetter. You lay it on thorns to dry. The wind takes it once. You ran a mile barefoot to get it back. It tore again. You stitched it again. Some days you forget you're even wearing anything. The fabric becomes part of you, a second skin made of duty and failure. You dream in it, you bleed in it, you'll probably be buried in it. No one will sew you a shroud. No one will strip you down to silk. Your uniform is all you shall ever own. And still, you fold it carefully before bed, lay it beside your straw like it deserves better than you. You smooth out the wrinkles and whisper an apology to the cloth. You don't know why. You sleep beside it, and in the morning it wears you again. And maybe now, you can stop noticing how much it hurts. Just long enough to rest. You smell his breakfast before you see it. Thick pork fat sizzling in the hearth, honeyed oats boiled in cream, bread so fresh the crust still cracks like ice when torn. You weren't meant to breathe it in, but you do, because scent is the only part of it that's yours. You haven't set eaten. You won't for hours, but you still rise at dawn to prepare it. You hold the tray, careful not to rattle the pewter goblet. You wrap the bread in cloth, not to keep it warm, but to shield it from your fingers, in case the knight suspects you touched it too fondly. He eats alone. Not in silence, though. No, he likes to talk while he chews, boasting, complaining, spitting flecks of egg and meat as he rants about the steward, the bishop, the weather, the wine. He expects you to stand there, straight, still, starving, nodding at the right moments. Once you nodded wrong. He flung a plum at you. It missed, hit the wall, slid down like a wound. You cleaned it without a word, then bowed deeper. Today he doesn't speak. He just gestures toward the hearth, where the meat sizzles on a spit you turned since cock's crow. Your hands still burn from the heat. You hide them behind your back. He eats with a dagger. Not for show, he prefers it. Stabs the meat like it insulted his lineage. Rips the bread with hands too soft for war. Drinks from a goblet you polished that morning, leaving your thumbprint invisible beneath the rim. You memorize every movement. You're trained to anticipate. If he wants more, you should already be pouring it. If he gestures, you should already be moving. If he looks bored, you should already be gone. He drops a bone on the floor. You kneel, pick it up. He watches, says nothing. That's the game. He drops. You kneel, he watches. It's not about the bone, it's about the hierarchy. You're the step below his heel. You're the silence between his sentences. You carry the tray out after. His leftovers still warm. You smell roasted pear. It breaks you a little. You slip into the back corridor, where no one is watching, and press the tray to your chest. Just for a second, just to feel the heat through the tin. It's the closest you'll get to warmth this morning. There's bread crust, a bitten fig, a curl of cheese. You don't eat it. You want to, God you want to, but you've seen what happens. The cook's boy stole a skin of wine once, just a sip. He was beaten so long you thought he died. He didn't, but he walks funny now, laughs too loud. You learn from that. So you carry the scraps to the kitchen, eyes straight, tray steady. You scrape them into the hog bucket. They'll eat better than you today. They usually do. Your own breakfast, when it comes, is barley porridge that tastes like sorrow, cold, gray, thick enough to stand a spoon in. If you had a spoon, you use your fingers. You don't even flinch anymore. That's just life now. You lick them clean and call it finished. You don't get meat. Unless someone dies. You got a sausage once. A knight's hound choked on it mid-feast, and no one wanted the rest. You took it from the floor. Didn't ask. Didn't wait. Just took. You still dream about it sometimes. The spice, the grease, the guilt. Your fingers still smell faintly of lye from scrubbing the knight's plate. You wipe them on your trousers, the same patch that's already stiff from 2 days ago. It doesn't help, but it's something to do. You wait in the corridor now, tray empty, hunger loud. He calls for you. His voice is always a bark, even when he means it kindly, which he doesn't. Not today. You hurry back in. Bow. He hands you a list of things to fetch. Polish. Saddle. Deliver. You nod. His breakfast is finished. Yours hasn't begun. You scrape the last of the grease from the hearth before you go. Out in the courtyard, a stable hand is gnawing on a raw turnip. You envy him. He offers you a bite with his eyes. You shake your head. You don't want charity. You want dignity. You still take neither, apparently. By noon, your stomach is a knot of nothing. Just air and memory. You tighten your belt to push it in. It doesn't help. You've done this before. Later in the armory, you find a crust of bread left beside a barrel. Old, hard, probably dropped. You stare at it for a while. Just stare. Then you take it. You don't eat it. You carry it with you the rest of the day like a secret. Like a hope. You won't eat it. Not yet. You'll save it for when things are worse. And they always get worse. By evening, when the night dines again, you'll be there, polishing his boots while he feasts on roasted duck and honey cakes. You'll nod while he spills wine on his collar. You'll carry the tray again, maybe catch a wink from the cook's boy, maybe not. And when the scraps are gone and the hogs are fed, and the grease stains your palms again, you'll sit on the back step. And maybe then, you'll eat your crust. Or maybe you one set. Maybe you hold it a little longer. Pretend it seps something else. Pretend it seps enough. And maybe now, you can forget what hunger is. Just for tonight. Just for a moment. The armor doesn't set shine like stories say. It reeks. Of rust, sweat and blood that was never yours. Of damp straw and iron filings. Of effort you weren't thanked for and injuries you didn't receive. You carry it anyway. Because that seps your place. It starts before dawn. You collect each piece from its storage trunk like sacred relics. But there's no reverence in your touch. Only caution. A dropped pauldron means punishment. A smudge on the breastplate means accusations. A scratch, even the whisper of one, is enough to ruin your day. It is heavy. Heavier than you expected the first time you lifted it. The chest plate alone feels like a coffin lid. The greaves clang when you walk, no matter how carefully you try to bind them. The mail hauberk, when damp, is like dragging a drowned man over your shoulders. You stagger under it. Always have. The knight never asks how it feels. He just spreads his arms and waits for you to dress him like a statue that breathes. You buckle his straps, tie his laces, twist the cords behind his back. Your fingers grow numb by the third layer. But you keep going. You always keep going. The armor is polished, of course. By you. With sand and vinegar. With old rags soaked in lye. With bruised hands and tired arms that rotate endlessly. Scrub, rinse, repeat. You polish until your reflection stares back from the steel. And then you polish more. Not for pride. For fear. He checks. With a gloved finger he wipes along the rim of the helm. Once he found soot. You still have the welt across your shoulder from the whip. It's faded now, but it aches when it rains. You polish with both care and resentment, a delicate balance. Each piece has a memory. The vambrace with the dent from the last tournament, where your knight charged too fast and fell from his horse. The gorget that doesn't quite sit straight, bent slightly from a blow he took in a bar brawl, not a battlefield. The sabatons you once dropped on your foot, 3 toes bruised, no one noticed. You carry it all. In a leather cart when allowed, on your back when not. Once he made you carry it across the courtyard during a thunderstorm, said it needed airing. It weighed double soaked in rain, and your spine ached for 3 days after. He laughed, called you a mule. You didn't laugh back. You knew better. You don't let you wear armor. You carry it. That seps the rule. You bear the burden so someone else can bear the glory. You shine the steel so someone else can glint in the sunlight. You take the weight so someone else can pretend they earned it. There's seps of poetry to it, but you're not a poet. You're a boy with blisters and a bruised shoulder who has memorized the shape of every buckle, every hinge, every cruel inch of steel that guards another man's life, but never your own. You wonder what it would feel like to wear it. Just once. To feel the weight not as a task, but as protection. To clench your fists inside gauntlets. To lift your chin beneath a helm. To hear the world muffled by layers of metal and think, even for a moment, that you were safe. You tried it once. When the night was gone, drunk, off hunting, or maybe passed out in the stables, you crept into the chamber and slipped on a piece. Just the breastplate, just for a second. It swallowed you. The gap at your neck yawned wide. The leather straps didn't reach around your back. You stood there, arms trembling, heart hammering in your throat. For a moment you felt like something else, not a squire, not a servant. But then the latch gave out. It clattered to the floor. Loud, too loud. You scrambled, slipped, knocked over the scabbard stand. The noise echoed like guilt. You cleaned it in a panic. Breath held the entire time. No one found out, you think. But you never tried again. Now, when you look at the armor, you see your place again. Not in it. Beneath it. You carry the weight of another man's war. You drag the remnants of his battles up stairwells and through courtyards. You pray the rivets hold. You pray the rust stays hidden. You pray that, this time, he doesn't blame you for the dent someone else made. The chainmail stinks of sweat. It drips if left hung too long. You drape it over your shoulder and stagger through the hall like a condemned man dragging his chains. No one helps. No one offers a hand. This is your job. And when he mounts his horse, clad in the armor you labored over, gleaming like a hero in some old song, he doesn't look at you. Not once. He rides off. You stay behind. You're left with the scraps, the cords, the oil-soaked rags, the belt you forgot to repair. You gather them into your arms like a scavenger and return to the chamber where the air still smells of sweat and iron. You sit for a moment. Just one. Long enough to stretch your back. Long enough to run your fingers over the calluses that weren't there last year. Long enough to wonder how many more seasons your spine can take. Then you stand. The armor is gone, but its weight remains. You carry it in your arms, in your shoulders, in your sleep. You dream of dropping it, of letting it sink into mud and walking away, but you don't, because you stir the Squire. And this is the armor you carry. Now close your eyes. Let the ache soften. Let your hands rest, just for a little while. And maybe now, you can sleep. Yusef never held it like he has. The sword, that is. You carry it, clean it, polish it, worship it in a way, but never wield it. That's not your role. Your hands weren't made for swinging, only scrubbing, oiling, preserving the edge like some sacred relic. It waits for you each morning, half hidden in its scabbard, lying across the bench like a sleeping animal. One wrong move, one slip of the cloth, and it bites. You've been bitten before. A shallow slice across your palm. It bled fast, surprised you. The night laughed, told you it was learning you. You believed him. The sword is not beautiful. Not really. The stories always speak of gleaming blades, jeweled hilts, carved runes. This one is plain, functional. The leather on the grip has come loose twice. The crossguard is nicked, battered. The fuller holds a dark line of grime that won't lift, no matter how many hours you scrub. But still, you treat it like it's Sep's royalty, because to him it is. He names it when he drinks, gives it titles like Wormtooth or Lady Mercy. You nod as if it makes sense, as if the blade is something more than metal shaped for stabbing, as if it remembers glory and not just rust. You begin by laying out the oilcloth, always the same one, folded just so. A small bottle of linseed oil, a rag cut from an old tunic, yours probably. You work in circles, slow and reverent, careful not to miss the base of the hilt. That's where the salt gathers, from his hands, his sweat, his history. You wipe until the blade gleams, but not too much. If it shines too bright, he says it looks unblooded. If it shines too little, he says you've grown lazy. You learn to hit that perfect invisible line. There's Sep's a rhythm to it. Forward, back, grip, twist, breathe. Sometimes when no one's watching, you whisper to it. Not words, just sounds, little nothings, like talking to a horse, or a fever, or a wound. You tell it what you did that day. You tell it what you wish you could do. You ask it how many lives it's taken. It never answers. But sometimes you think it hears. The edge must be tested, but gently with a thumb angled just right. You don't press, just feel. The sharpness should hum, not scream. If it bites too fast, it means it's angry. If it glides without tension, you've done well. You polish the blade until your own reflection blurs in it. You never look too long. You don't stat like what stares back. The knight keeps it sheathed most days. It's not about need, it's about presence. The sword is part of the image, part of the myth. A knight without a blade is just a man with entitlement. A squire without a knight is nothing. You carry the blade when he travels. Strapped to your back or hanging from your hip, but always on the left, never right, he's made that clear. You bear its weight on long marches, uphill through mud, down into ravines, into forests where branches claw at your skin but never dare scratch the steel. You draw it only when commanded, and even then you draw it to hand it over, not to fight. It feels wrong in your grip, foreign, like it knows you're not supposed to hold it this way, like the balance shifts, punishing you for presuming. You once imagined stealing it, running far, becoming something else, a warrior, a bandit, a story. But what would you even do? You don't know how to fight, you barely know how to stand tall. The blade would betray you, fall from your hand, shame you before you ever reach the edge of the woods. The night would find you before hunger did. He always does. So instead, you polish. Day after day, night after night. Even when your knuckles split from the cold, even when your breath fogs the steel, even when your fingers tremble from exhaustion. Because this is your duty. Because this is your training. Because this is the sword, not yours, but near you. And that sep's the closest you still ever get. The blade knows him. It doesn't set know you. You stir the pause between its battles. You wonder what stories it tells in silence, what it remembers, what it wants, if it longs to rest or longs to strike, if it hungers. You do. Hunger, that is. You wonder if blades dream. You dream of dropping it, just letting it clatter on the flagstones one morning, letting the sound echo through the great hall like defiance. But you won't. You'd pick it up again before anyone could notice. Because the sword matters. And you serve what matters. Once you caught the knight talking to it. Drunk, kneeling beside the fire, whispering something, an apology, a prayer. You watched from the shadows holding the rag, not sure if you were supposed to see. He didn't set notice you, or pretended not to. The next morning he slapped you for a scuff on the pommel that wasn't there. You took it. You always take it. And that evening when the blade returned to its place, you laid the cloth beneath it with care. You bowed your head. You whispered nothing. You let it sleep. And maybe now, you can pretend you stir made of steel too. Just for a moment. Just long enough to sleep. The boots always stink. Even when they're new, even when they've only stepped through polished halls and not muddy fields, they still stink, of leather, sweat, and the kind of pride that rots from the inside out. You breathe it in every morning as you kneel with your brush and cloth. He calls it boot black. You call it shame. You work fast but careful. Too much polish and the boots slip on the stones. And if he falls, it's your fault. Not enough. And they scuff by midday. Also your fault. You've learned to judge the exact amount, the rhythm of the strokes, the direction of the grain. You know these boots better than your own hands. The left one has a crease across the ankle where he slouches when drunk. The right has a burn mark from the time he kicked over a brazier during an argument. You buff over that spot more than any other, like the memory can be erased with friction. It can set. Some mornings he watches you polish, sits in his chair, legs spread wide, a haunch of salted meat in one hand and your worth dangling in the other. He doesn't speak, just stares. You can feel the heat of his eyes on your neck. You pretend not to notice. You dip the cloth again, start on the heels. Then he spits. Not near you, on you. A little glob of phlegm right on the floor beside the boots. Just a test. He wants to see if you'll flinch. You don't. Not anymore. You wipe it. Keep your head bowed. He calls it discipline. You call it surviving. Bootstraps are a lie. At least the kind you're expected to pull yourself up by. Yours broke last year and you had to sew them back on with horsehair. They snapped again during a tournament when the knight demanded you run across the field with a message. You tripped. He didn't wait for you to stand. Just shouted to hurry. You did. Limping, bleeding, but you ran. You were told once that squirehood is the path to knighthood. that obedience leads to elevation, that if you serve with honor, you'll earn your own boots, not to shine but to wear. No one tells you what happens if the knight forgets, or if he dies, or if he simply decides you're not worth the title. You've seen squires get passed over, replaced, discarded like worn-out belts. One vanished overnight. No one asked why. You polish faster now, because you're afraid of vanishing too. You remember when you first saw the boots? They were magnificent then, tall, glossy, embossed with the house sigil. You thought they meant something. Power, courage, status. Now you know they just mean weight. They stomp through puddles you mop. They crush your fingers when you lace them too slow. They rest on your back when you're used as a stool. That happened last winter. The Lord's seat broke, and your knight, half drunk, patted your shoulder and said, "Down, boy. You did it." On hands and knees he placed both feet on your back while the room laughed. You told yourself it was temporary, that it was just a moment. It sets always just a moment, and then another, and another, until they're stacked so high you can't see over them anymore. Just boots, boots above you, boots behind you, boots kicking open doors and stepping on your story. You dream about boots, not in fear, in fury. You dream of hurling them into the fire, watching the polish melt and bubble. You dream of standing barefoot in the snow, laughing, free of the weight, free of the smell, free of the bowing. You dream of walking away, but you don't stat, because a squire without a knight is nothing, and boots without polish don't shine, and dreams, in this place, are a luxury you can't afford. So you wake, kneel, and begin again. You dip the cloth, swirl the brush, rub the polish in slow, steady circles. You lift the heel, cradle the arch, dig the grime from the welt. You pull the strap, tug the laces, bow your head. You do it all quietly, because that's what obedience sounds like. And when it's finished, you place the boots by the hearth, exactly 2 finger widths apart. You wait for him to step into them, to test them, to smirk. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Once, he said, "You do good work, boy." That was 3 years ago. You remember every syllable. It was the closest you ever came to praise. You wrap the rag around your hand and hide it in your belt. You straighten your back. You walk away without making a sound. And maybe now, just maybe, you can stop feeling the sole of his boot pressed between your shoulder blades. At least until tomorrow. Rest now. It hates you. You don't know why. Maybe it's your smell. Maybe your voice. Maybe it can sense weakness the way dogs smell. Fear and nobles sniff failure. But the knight's warhorse, the magnificent temperamental beast bred for glory and slaughter, has never liked you. And it makes sure you know it. Every morning before the sun is fully awake, you shuffle through the frostbitten courtyard, clutching a bristle brush and a bucket of half-frozen water, preparing yourself for the first insult of the day. His name is something ridiculous, Valor Blood or Iron Flame, but you never use it aloud. In your head, he's just bastard. Towering, mud-stained and smirking in his own way, he stomps one massive hoof the moment he sees you approach. A warning. You keep your distance. He doesn't set. You've been bitten twice. Once on the shoulder, once on the wrist. Both times when your hands were full and your mind was elsewhere. He knows. He waits for those moments. There's a scar on your wrist now. Crescent-shaped. Still itches when it rains. The stable hand says you're too soft. That horses need respect, but first they need to fear you. You tried raising your voice once. The horse responded by backing you into a wall and nearly sitting on you. The knight laughed for a week. You learn to whisper instead. You speak to it like it's a god you're trying not to offend. "Easy," you murmur, brushing along its flank. "Good boy, don't kill me today." He twitches. Not because of your voice, because of the brush. He hates that one. You reach for the softer one. He hates that too. You settle for using your hand, running your fingers down the line of his ribs, feeling the muscle ripple like stormwater under skin. The horse is beautiful, in a brutal way. Muscles like tree roots, a mane that knots if not combed daily, eyes that look like they've seen battlefields and dreamt of more. He doesn't trust you, but you still feed him, still clean his hooves, still check the iron shoes for wear. Because that's your job. Even when he tries to trample you, Even when he kicks the stall door the moment you pass, even when you find fresh dung where you just cleaned an hour ago, you lift the saddle. It's heavier than you remember, always is. Not because it's gotten heavier, because you've gotten older, more tired, more used to the weight, and less willing to bear it. The leather creaks. You swing it up onto the horse's back with the same grunt you always do. The girth strap is too tight. Always too tight. He bloats his belly on purpose. You know it. Waits until the moment you've tightened the strap, then exhales and shifts, nearly throwing the whole thing off balance. You adjust. Again. Your arms are shaking now. You haven't eaten yet. Your hands are still raw from boot polishing. Your sleep was thin, and your dreams were worse. But none of that matters to the horse, or the night, or the world. You reach for the bridle. He jerks his head. You sigh. You try again, this time gentler. Offer a slice of apple you stole from the kitchen floor. He eyes you, accepts it, lets you hook the bit into place. You don't celebrate. You know better. The knight appears just as you're checking the saddle straps again. He says nothing, but inspects the horse like it's an extension of himself. Runs a hand down the beast's neck, nods. You stand back. He swings up into the saddle, using your shoulder as balance. No warning, no thanks. His boot digs into your collarbone. You pretend not to feel it. You pretend the hoofprint on your chest from yesterday is just a bruise and not a message. The knight rides off. The horse flicks his tail in your face as he leaves. You're left standing in a patch of wet straw and trampled dirt, holding a bucket of water too dirty to use now. You don't dump it. That would be wasteful. You carry it back, refill it, fetch oats, prepare the stall again. Because he shall be back, and it will start all over. You once told a passing traveler that you cared for the knight's horse. He smiled, clapped your back and said, "Hey, so you're a groom." You didn't correct him. It sounded better than Squire. It sounded like something someone chose. But you didn't choose this. And neither did the horse. Maybe that's why he hates you. You're both trapped in someone else's story. Both fed, trained, polished, but never asked. He fights because he's kicked and pulled and prodded. You serve because you're sworn and silent and small. You wonder what he dreams of. Freedom, grass, the silence of a field untouched by feet or war. You dream of those things too. Sometimes you watch him sleep, standing still, eyes half closed. You envy the way he stays upright while resting. It looks impossible. You've tried it, nodding off against the stable wall when no one's watching. You fall every time. You envy his strength, but not his purpose. You'll never ride him. That's the unspoken truth. The knight would never allow it. This beast was bred for heroes, not the hands that scrape dung from its hooves. But still, you touch his mane once in a while, just to remember what power feels like beneath your fingers. And when he snorts at you, sharp and sudden, you smile. Not because you stir welcome, but because at least he sees you. And maybe now, you can lean against the stable door, close your eyes, and pretend for just one moment that you're not afraid of him anymore. Sleep, if you can. Your hands are not hands anymore. They're maps of pain, blisters where there should be calluses, cracks where there should be skin, blood beneath the nails, black, dry, permanent like old wax sealed beneath glass. No one told you it would feel like this. When you were sworn in, knees bent, hand pressed to steel, eyes lowered, the ceremony was short. Just a few lines about honor, duty, loyalty. You didn't really understand them. You were still a boy, shaking with excitement and cold. Your father wept. The knight barely looked at you. They called it an oath. You thought that meant something, that the words had power. They did, but only over you. Since then, you've repeated those words silently every time your fingers split open from rope burn, every time your feet bled in borrowed boots, every time your shoulder collapsed under the weight of mail. Loyalty, duty, honor, like prayer, like a curse. The others have blisters too. You've seen them. Some squires bind their fingers with scraps of cloth. Others use candle wax. Some just let them burst and harden. You tried all of it. Nothing works. It's the work itself that causes the wound, and the oath that keeps you from dropping the burden. Your palms sting today. You'd hope they'd scabbed over, but the saddle cinch tore them again when you slipped in the courtyard mud. The knight didn't wait. He barked your name and pointed to the fallen practice sword. So you picked it up, with torn hands, with a smile that wasn't real, with knuckles that throbbed with each heartbeat. He said you needed to toughen up. You whispered the oath again. Later, while scrubbing the hallway floor, blood from your palm streaked the stone. You tried to wipe it away before anyone noticed. You failed. The steward saw. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. It's SIDS, always nothing. You stir not allowed bandages. Not unless the injury interferes with your duties. That's the logic. If you can still polish, carry, saddle, kneel, then you're not truly hurt, just inconvenient, just soft, just unfinished. That's what squires are, unfinished things. Being shaped, sanded, hardened, or broken. You sleep on your side now to protect the blisters, but that just makes your shoulder ache. You can't win. You never could. And still, the oath holds. Even when you bite down on the inside of your cheek to stay awake during sermons, even when you're ordered to recite the lineage of your knight's house while fetching water and dodging thrown bones in the hall, even when you are forced to swear again, and again, and again. Every knighthood ceremony begins with the same words. You've heard them a dozen times, sworn them at least half, not for yourself, for the others, the sons of barons and lords, the boys with clean hands and polished shoes. They become knights. You become more useful. That's the math. And still, you swear, not because you believe, but because belief is irrelevant. The oath doesn't care how you feel, only that you repeat it. Loyalty, duty, honor, even when your feet bleed, even when your stomach growls, even when your knight forgets your name and calls you boy like it's the only word that fits. You are bound by words spoken in a hall with no echo, bound by rituals that were never made for you. Sometimes, you whisper new oaths. To yourself. I will not cry. I will not run. I will not dream of swords I'll never carry. These are your real promises, not spoken before lords or priests, but into the corner of your mattress when no one's looking. You once tried to break the oath. Just once. You stayed in bed an extra moment, let the morning pass without fetching the sword. The knight shouted. You said nothing. You wanted to see what would happen if you didn't obey. You lasted 10 minutes. Then you stood, limped, carried the armor with shaking arms, and when he asked why you were late, you said nothing, because excuses aren't knightly, and you still hope, somewhere, that you might be. One day, maybe. Your hands ache now. You roll your wrists, flex your fingers, skin splits along the creases, blood beads and smears against your tunic. You wipe it on your sleeve. You always do. The other squires joke about gloves, as if gloves would help. You laugh with them, then go back to polishing your knight's sword with torn hands. You bind your fingers with strips of wool. You pull your boots over cracked heels. You carry a shield too wide for your back. You hold your tongue through insults, bruises, silence. And still the oath echoes. Loyalty, duty, honor. It doesn't feel noble anymore. It just feels heavy. But you repeat it, because it's all you have. Because if you don't instead, what are you? Not a knight, not a man, just a shadow, a servant in steel's reflection. You flex your hand again. A blister splits. You wince. You bow your head. You whisper the words. And maybe now, just for tonight, you can loosen your grip. Let the oath rest, if only in your dreams. Sleep, now. The smells hit you first. Spices you can't name, roasted meats that glisten in the firelight. Wine bubbling in clay pitchers, bread warm enough to soften in the middle. You breathe them in as you pass the hall, not invited, not acknowledged, just passing, always passing. You've never been seated at a feast. That sip's not your place. You stand at the edge, behind the woven tapestries and stone pillars, back straight, hands clasped, watching, waiting, pretending not to look too long at what you'll never touch. Tonight is some occasion. A wedding? A treaty? A knight returned from skirmish? You didn't catch the reason. Doesn't matter. The reason is always the same. The nobles eat and you serve. You trail behind your knight as he enters, washed, perfumed, his beard combed, his boots cleaned until they shine like wet stone. Your work, all of it. He doesn't mention it. Of course not. You hover just out of sight, adjusting his cloak when it slips, brushing a stray thread from his tunic before anyone notices. He doesn't thank you. He never does. He steps into the light. You return to the shadows. The tables groan beneath the weight of food, ducks glazed in honey, eels wrapped in herbs, apples baked with cloves and dripping with syrup, cheese the color of sunrise, and bread, so much bread, fresh, warm, torn with laughter and dipped into wine. You haven't eaten since morning, and that was barley, dry and clumped like gravel. Your stomach twists, but you keep your face still, your hands folded, your posture straight. That's what's expected. You are the invisible boy, the silent shadow, the unseen thread that holds the night's illusion together. Euster called once, to refill the goblet. You step forward, pour carefully, don't spill, not a single drop. The night doesn't look at you, just slaps your wrist when you linger too long. You retreat again, pulse pounding. You hope no one saw that, but they did. They always do. The laughter echoes. Not because of you. You stir just nearby when it happens. The other squires stand along the wall, just like you. One of them tries to pick at a crust left on a servant's tray. A guard sees, smacks him behind the ear. The crust drops to the floor and is kicked beneath the table, forgotten, like you. The fire crackles. A bard begins to play. You have heard the tune before. It tells of a knight slaying a dragon, saving a lady, riding off into glory. You mouth the words. Not from belief, from repetition, from memory, from knowing that the stories don't include the boy who cleaned the knight's sword, the boy who dragged the armor through the mud, the boy who polished the boots and carried the shield, and stood in the cold while glory was earned without him. The stories forget your name. So does the night sometimes. Once you lingered after a feast. When the hall was quiet, the candles melted down, the floor littered with bones and grease. You crouched near the high table and picked at a piece of pear. Just one bite. You didn't even chew it. Just let it sit on your tongue until it dissolved like a memory. It tasted of honey. And guilt. You cleaned for hours after that. The knight had vomited near the throne. His wine didn't sit right. You mopped it with rags soaked in vinegar. You scraped the floor with your fingernails where the stain wouldn't lift. The bard sings another tale. This one of a lost prince raised in a forest. A squire, brave and true, who becomes a hero by saving his master. You almost laugh. You wonder if the bard was ever a squire. Probably not. His fingers are too soft. You feel the hunger deeper now, not just in your belly but in your throat, your chest, your thoughts. You try not to breathe too deeply. The scents make it worse. A servant passes with a tray. You step aside. You always do. But this time she glances at you. Briefly. Eyes soft. She doesn't smile. That would be too much. But she leaves a heel of bread on the corner of the tray. Just there. Just long enough. You wait. 3 beats. Then slip it into your sleeve. You don't beat it. Not yet. That would be suspicious. That would be greedy. That would be human. You hold it like a relic. The feast roars on. The night toasts. Someone makes a crude joke. Someone else drops a chicken leg and leaves it. The dogs fight over it beneath the table. You watch, and you do not move. When it's over, the hall clears slowly. Wine spilled, plates overturned, nobles carried to their chambers, half asleep and too full. Your knight stumbles, arm draped over your shoulder. He curses the wine. He curses the eels. He curses you, softly but not kindly. You guide him to bed. He collapses without a word. You remove his boots. You drape the furs. You blow out the candle. Then you return to the hall. You clean it. In silence. Bones, broken goblets, a torn banner, wax hardened on the floor. Your hands move on their own now. You are muscle memory in motion. You finish before sunrise, before the next hunger begins. You sit by the hearth, alone. And then slowly. You take out the bread. You stare at it. You want to save it, but you don't set. You eat it in tiny bites. Like a ritual. Like an offering. It sets dry, but real. And maybe now, you can let that be enough. just enough to sleep. You stir told this is training. The bruises say otherwise. You start your morning with the wooden sword, not because it's effective, because it won't break bone, not easily. You grip it with torn hands, wrists already sore from saddling the horse, shoulders tight from lifting chainmail that isn't yours. The training yard is always colder than the rest of the castle. It gathers wind like a punishment, gravel underfoot, dry mud packed into lines where the real knights spar. You stand near the fence. You're not ready for the yard itself, not yet, or maybe not ever. You don't get a partner, you get a target, a straw man bloated and stiff, dressed in torn rags. You swing at it, again, again, again. Your grip slips. Your wrist screams. You do it anyway. A voice barks corrections behind you. Elbow in, lower the point, shift your weight, tighten your core, the same things, repeated every day in the same flat voice of someone who stopped caring whether you improve or not. You miss. The straw dummy barely shifts. The knight steps forward, grabs your wrist, adjusts your arm too hard. His fingers dig into the blister there. You don't flinch. You learn not to. He calls your stance sloppy, your swing weak. He says the straw dummy could kill you in real battle. Everyone laughs, even the other squires, the ones higher up the ladder, the ones with better swords and cleaner tunics. They hit the straw and it shudders. You hit it and it yawns. You used to care. You used to dream that training would lead somewhere, to knighthood, to glory, to that golden moment when the sword would feel right in your hand and the armor would weigh less because it belonged to you. Now you just try to get through it. You know what comes after you fail to impress. Not a lecture, not a lesson. A blow. Sometimes with a glove, sometimes without. The knight says it's part of your shaping, that iron must be hammered to become a blade. You wonder if he knows you're not iron. You wonder if he cares. You train until your breath is a rattle, until your knees buckle, and you catch yourself on the dummy's shoulder like it's your only friend. The knight watches. He throws you a real sword, dulled at the edge, chipped from years of abuse. You catch it. It's heavier, angrier. Now fight, he says. You blink, look around. There sits no opponent, just him. You don't ask if he sips serious. You know better. You raise the blade. He draws his. It gleams. He doesn't hold back. He swings, fast, wide. You block. The shock of the blow jolts your shoulder. You stumble. He strikes again. You drop the blade. He stops, laughs, calls you hopeless. You want to cry, but you don't. You haven't said in weeks. You pick up the blade and hand it back to him. Grip first, like the knightly stories say. He waves you off like a gnat. You stir dismissed, but the beating lingers. Not just in your arms, but in your ribs, your pride, your silence. You walk back to the barracks, dragging your feet. Each step is a memory, a lesson. Training, they call it. But it feels more like erosion. You sit alone, wrap your wrists in linen scraps you stole from the cook's pile. No one notices, no one cares. You've seen other squires training with split lips and black eyes. They say it builds resilience. You say it builds quiet. One squire limped for days after a sparring match. Another went deaf in one ear after a helm struck too hard. He still stands by the knight's side, head tilted, listening with his good ear. They joke about it. He laughs. You wonder if you still laugh one day too. You dream of sparring someone weaker. A page, maybe. Someone you could beat. Just once. Just to know what it feels like to be on the other side of pain. But the dream fades when you return to the yard the next day. Same dummy. Same bruises. Same voice yelling the same things. You ask no questions. Questions earn more bruises. Instead, you count the strikes in your head. 12 swings today, 4 blocks, 2 stumbles, 1 new cut. That's an improvement, maybe. You hold on to that like it means something, like it might be enough. You stir told to practice alone in the evening. You do. Even though your hands are raw, even though your legs shake, even though your vision blurs when you move too fast. Because if you don't, someone will notice. And if they notice, more training, more correction, more beatings. So you grip the sword with broken hands, and swing, and swing, and swing, until the stars come out, until your arms fall numb, until the dummy leans like it's tired too. And maybe now, you can lay the blade down. Not in glory, not in strength, just in mercy, just to rest. Sleep, now. You used to think pages were beneath you. They're younger, after all, boys barely weaned, running around with tangled hair and crusted noses, carrying messages and chasing chickens. You pitied them. At first, now you envy them. Pages are allowed to be messy. They're expected to be loud, clumsy, curious. When they drop something, it's met with a laugh. When you drop something, it's met with a backhand. Pages spill wine and it becomes a joke. You spill wine and it becomes a punishment. They call it learning for them. For you, it sets failure. You clean up after them sometimes, after they've left a trail of mud through the hall or forgotten to collect the rushes from the floor. You're not supposed to, but no one tells them what to do. You're supposed to know better, to pick up the slack, to act your station. That station being invisible, responsible, replaceable. You watch them sometimes, pages giggling behind the stable, gnawing on raw onions and throwing stones at rats. They still believe in heroes, in dragons, in quests. You did too once, before you learned that dragons aren't real but knights with tempers are. One of them called you sir once. It was meant as a joke. You didn't laugh. You still remember it though. Then there are the pigs. Literal ones. You muck their pens when the stable hands are drunk or busy. It's not officially your duty, but duties shift like mud here. You've waded knee-deep in filth to rescue a sick piglet more than once. The steward noticed, said nothing. The knight noticed, laughed. The pigs don't hate you, at least. They grunt when you arrive, press their noses to your thigh, searching for scraps. Sometimes you sneak them crusts. You're not sure why. Maybe because they're the only ones who don't look at you like you've failed them. You've stepped in worse. You've smelled worse. You've become worse. You think of pigs often, how they eat, how they live, how they're bred to be eaten. Raised in pens, marked, weighed, then slaughtered without ever having tasted a different kind of life. You wonder if squires are the same. Then there sits privilege. Not the abstract kind, the literal kind. It walks past you every day wearing silk and smugness. Sons of lords who arrive already assigned to glory. Squires who've never held a bucket, never polished a blade. They eat better, sleep better. They get horses before you do. Armor that fits, swords with names. You carry their meals sometimes. You bow when they pass. You've learned to smile without meaning it. To say my lord with a steady voice. To listen when they explain swordplay, poorly, as if you haven't already bled for it. They joke about you when they think you can't hear. They call you Mud Squire. They think it's clever. One of them tripped in the yard once, landed face first in horse dung. You helped him up. He slapped your hand away, said your touch was filthier than the ground. Later that night, he couldn't find his boots. You didn't steal them, but you didn't help him look either. You learned where you stand. Pages can laugh, pigs can wallow, but you must bow, kneel, lift, carry. You must scrub the stone steps they trip over, polish the shields they hang crooked, endure the heat from a fire you didn't light. Because one day, maybe, you shall be a knight too. That's the lie they feed you with cold porridge and cold shoulders. But you don't say it aloud. You feed it back to yourself in whispers. It'll be different when I earn my sword. When I take my own squire, I shall treat him kindly. I once forget where I came from. You wonder if the other knights once whispered the same things. You wonder when they stopped. You get kicked by a page today. Not hard, just a playful nudge that catches your shin. It leaves a bruise. He laughs. The knight sees, says nothing. Later you see that same page crying because he dropped a scroll in the fire. You don't laugh. You don't comfort him either. You just watch. You were him once, wide-eyed, hopeful, unbroken. Now you stand at the edge of the hall, smelling like pigs, wrists bandaged, mouth shut. Someone asks you to fetch something. You don't hear what. You just go, and maybe now, you can forget the difference between a page a pig and a squire. Because in the end, they all get eaten. Sleep, now. You know too much. Not about politics, not about warfare, not about honor or strategy or anything written in the margins of books you'll never read. No, you know too much about him. The knight you serve. The one who holds your future by the throat. The one who gives you orders with a wave and strikes with a hand that's never been blistered. The one they sing songs about, Sir Alderic the Bold, or the Valiant Boar, or whatever title he prefers this week. You've seen beneath the titles. You've seen his secrets. The scars on his back he doesn't explain. Not war wounds but lash marks. Faint, faded, from when he was a squire too, perhaps. You wonder if he remembers the boy who gave them to him. You've seen him cry. Only once, late when the castle was quiet, and the feast had been particularly cruel. He sat in the dark with his helm in his lap and didn't notice you standing there. You backed away before he could see, before the tears reached his mouth and became weakness. He cursed his father, over and over. You didn't tell anyone. You've heard him beg. Not in battle, not in confession, but in a woman's chamber, when he thought the stone walls wouldn't echo, pleading, drunken, messy, not for love, for forgiveness, for something you couldn't name. You left before it ended. That felt kinder. You've cleaned up his shame, after too much wine, after too much rage, after he threw a stool and missed the servant by inches. You scrubbed the blood from the flagstones. It wasn't yours, but it could have been. He thanked you for that one. Not with words, with a nod. You almost wept. You've read the letters, or glanced at least, sealed in wax, addressed to names you didn't recognize. One in particular keeps returning, the same script, the same perfume-sweet parchment, folded like a wound. He burns them after reading, every time. You smell smoke and secrets. You've seen him kill, not on the battlefield, but here, quietly, a stable hand accused of theft. No trial, no spectacle, just a blade, a command, a body. You helped bury it behind the woodshed, he said. No one will miss him. You never spoke of it again. You keep all of this in your chest, like stones in a sack, heavy, cold, grinding against each other in the dark. Sometimes you want to spill them, dump them out, scream them into the night. But you can sit, because if the night falls, so do you. You're tied to him, by more than oaths, more than duty. His rise is your only chance at escaping the floor you sleep on. And if he's unmade, drunk, broken, cursed, then you're nothing but the boy who carried his armor. So you stay quiet, even when you find the bruises on the chambermaid's arms, even when the steward's ledger doesn't match what's in the cellar, even when the nobleman's saddle mysteriously goes missing, and your knight returns with a finer one, polished and proud. You bite your tongue. You nod when he says the rumors are lies. You bow when he jokes about the past. You laugh, carefully, when he makes comments sharp enough to draw blood but shallow enough to pass as wit. Because that's what squires do. They absorb the rot so the surface can shine. You see the way others look at him, with awe, with envy. They don't know what you know. They believe the songs, the tales of valor, the stories passed over wine. You know the truth. That he sleeps with a dagger under his pillow, not for protection but for fear, that he mumbles names in his sleep, not prayers but regrets, that he drinks not to celebrate, but to forget, that his armor fits like guilt, that his blade is clean not from peace but from someone else doing the dirty work, that someone is you. You wash the blood, you burn the letters, you whisper the alibis, you patch the lies, and still you call him my lord. Still, you fasten his cloak. Still you kneel, because his secrets are now your own, because carrying them is part of the job, because knowing them makes you dangerous, but only to yourself. You wonder what he would do if you told, if you whispered the truth to the steward, the priest, the baron. Would he exile you, kill you, laugh? You shall never know, because you once said speak, because you're loyal, or afraid, or both. And maybe now, you can let one of those secrets slip from your mind, just long enough to sleep. The first time you were punished, it surprised you. Not because you hadn't made a mistake, you had. The knight's cloak was late from the laundress, and you failed to fetch it in time. He had to wear the travel-worn one with the stain on the hem, a minor sin in the eyes of the world. But to him, it was a betrayal. You expected a lecture, a stern glare, maybe a few harsh words you'd repeat later in your head until they dulled. What you got was the back of his hand. Quick, flat, precise. Your cheek burned for hours. So did your memory. There was no drama, no raised voices. He hit you like it was part of the job, a gesture as casual as buckling his belt. You blinked, nodded, and said, "I understand, my lord." And that was the beginning. Mistakes have weight here, not measured in consequence, but in pain. You forget the wine, that's a cuff to the ear. You saddle the wrong horse, that's your knuckles wrapped with the edge of a spoon. You speak when not spoken to, a boot to the shin. No one questions it, because squires are tools, not people, and tools must be shaped. You learn to flinch without moving, to absorb blows like water absorbs stones. You smile with split lips and thank the knight for his wisdom. Some days it's not even you who makes the mistake. A page drops a tray, you're blamed for training him poorly. A servant miscounts the candles, you're scolded for poor oversight. The knight trips on his own cloak, you must have folded it wrong. Punishment is not about guilt, it's about proximity. You steer nearby when things go wrong, so you pay. There's a switch hanging behind the armory door, thin, flexible, made from the branch of a birch tree. It hums when it moves through air. You know that sound. It's followed by the hiss of skin and the sharp breath you try not to release. He used it last week. You forgot to oil the links in his mail shirt. He said nothing at first. Just told you to fetch the switch. You did. You always do. 6 lashes. Not deep, but sharp. Enough to leave stripes across your back like ink drawn by a cruel quill. You couldn't lie on your side for 2 nights. The worst part isn't the pain. It sets the silence after. The way you both go back to your roles, him ordering, you nodding, as if nothing happened, as if skin doesn't remember, as if dignity isn't something that can be taken piece by piece. There are other punishments, quieter ones. Being denied food, being made to stand outside the hall in the rain, holding his sword, being forced to clean the latrines with a rag instead of a shovel. He gets creative when he seps bored. Once he made you recite the family lineage of every knight in the hall while kneeling on dry peas. You couldn't walk straight for a day. Once he locked you in the tack room for forgetting to saddle his horse with the black girth instead of the brown. You stayed in there until the sun set. No water, no light. You didn't scream, but you did cry. Quietly, into your sleeve. The other squires don't talk about their punishments, but you see it, the stiff way they walk, the tremble when someone raises a hand too quickly, the way they all avoid eye contact when someone drops a cup. You all know. You sir all just waiting for your turn. You wonder what mistake will be the last. The one that earns exile. Or worse. There are stories, whispered through straw walls and kitchen doors, of squires who vanished after breaking a sword, after speaking too boldly, after looking the wrong man in the eyes. You try not to believe them, but they feel true. One day the knight punishes you for something you didn't even know you did. He doesn't explain, just grabs your wrist, pulls you close and whispers, "Don disappoint me again." You nod, even though you don't know what you did, even though your wrist aches for hours afterward, even though your heart pounds with a fear that has no shape. Because fear doesn't need a reason, it just needs repetition. You start punishing yourself. Not out of guilt, out of practice. You bite your tongue when you speak too quickly. You deny yourself the stale crust hidden in your sleeve when you forget to bow deeply enough. You run laps around the training yard until your legs give out, because you dropped the polish rag this morning and didn't apologize fast enough. You learn to correct your own failings before he notices. You learn to guess what he'll hate tomorrow. You learn how to stay small and silent and steady. You become a shape designed to avoid impact. A body built to absorb expectation. And still, you whisper the oaths. Still, you polish the sword. Still you kneel, because there's nowhere else to go. Because pain has become the language of training. Because one day, Maybe you'll pass all the tests. And maybe now, just for tonight, you can rest without dreaming of switches, slaps, and silence. Sleep now. You dream of it sometimes. Not often, not boldly, not like the pages do, shouting pretend oaths with sticks for swords and bedrolls for shields. Your dream is smaller, quieter, sharper. A sword of your own. It never looks the same twice. Sometimes it's wide and heavy, chipped along the edge like it's been through something. Sometimes it's slender, elegant, with a grip wrapped in red leather and a pommel carved like a wolf's head. Sometimes it's not steel at all, just light humming in your hands like it remembers who you were supposed to become. But always, it belongs to you. Not borrowed, not someone else's to polish, to fear, to carry, like a cross, yours. You imagine drawing it from your belt, not to fight, but just to hold, to feel the weight shift into your fingers as if it had been waiting there all along, to swing it through air and hear the hum that says this is yours, this is you. And in the dream they all notice. The knight, the steward, the pages, even the pigs. They see the blade and they stop speaking. Not because of its beauty, but because of what it means, that you've become something, that you are no longer a servant, no longer the shadow, that you are sharp and real. But then you wake up, and your hands still smell like saddle soap and blister ointment. Your wrists are wrapped in wool. Your back aches from the straw you slept on. The only thing in your hand is the boot you forgot to finish polishing. And the sword? Still in its scabbard. Still his. Still waiting to be cleaned again. You used to think knighthood was a matter of time, that all squires eventually crossed the invisible line and emerged on the other side, blessed, anointed, armored, that it came after enough loyalty, enough obedience, enough silence. Now you stir not so sure. You've seen squires older than you, stronger, quieter, still carrying trays at banquets, still oiling swords they'll never draw. One of them, a boy named Garrett, trained 3 years longer than you. One day he was told he'd be sent to another house to serve a higher cause. No ceremony, no sword, just gone. You think about Garrett a lot. You wonder if he still dreams. You try not to want too much. When you polish your knight's blade, you tell yourself it's enough to touch one, that being near a sword is almost the same as owning it, that the shine of another man's weapon can reflect on your hands if you hold it long enough. But the truth is your reflection never appears in the steel. Only his. You've asked the other squires if they think they'll be knighted. Most say yes with a shrug. Some with a laugh. One said nothing at all, just looked away and tightened his boots. You imagine the moment, if it ever comes, your name called, your shoulders touched with a sword, your own sword handed to you, heavy and warm and real. You still name it. Not something grand like King Sorrow or Wormfang, something quiet, something that remembers. Maybe ash, maybe silence, maybe you wouldn't set name it at all, because it's not about the name, it's about the fact that no one can take it from you, that it doesn't get locked in a chest at night, that you don't carry it like shame, that it doesn't belong to a man who forgets your name when he's drunk. But that sep's just the dream. In the waking world, you unsheath your knight's blade again, fingers aching. The leather grip has started to rot. You mention it. He grunts, says you can rewrap it yourself. Not for him, for you. Practice, he says. You do it carefully. You finish by nightfall. The new wrap is crude but firm. You hold the sword for a second longer than you should. And for just a moment, it feels like it fits. Then you hear footsteps. You put it down. Later you lie awake. The wind moans through the crack in the wall. Someone snores 3 bedrolls over. Your stomach turns, not from hunger, but from that hollow space where the dream used to live. You wonder how many more years it will take, or if it will ever come, or if your name will be forgotten entirely, just another squire who cleaned swords until the sword became too heavy to lift. But for now, you close your eyes, and maybe tonight, the sword in your dream will return, waiting for you, gleaming in the mist, silent as a promise. Maybe it will let you hold it. Maybe it once said disappear. And maybe now, you can finally sleep. You've never been in battle, but you've smelled it. Not from the center, where swords clash and blood spills hot onto iron. No, you smell it from the back, from the line of squires crouched by the supply wagons, tending the injured, refilling water skins, stitching mail torn by hands not their own. It smells like mud and blood and meat. Not roasted meat, raw, ripped, opened. The kind of smell that curls under your nails and lives there for days, no matter how hard you scrub. You remember the first time clearly, not because of what you saw, but because of what you were kept from seeing. The knight mounted his horse. The other squires cheered him on. You stood at the stirrup, adjusting his greaves. He didn't look at you, just rode out, sword drawn, cape trailing behind him like the tail of a comet. For a moment, you almost felt proud. Then he was gone, and you were left behind. Your job was to tend the camp, stoke the fires, boil the bandages, fill buckets with river water, watch the smoke rise in the distance, thick and oily and slow. That's what no one tells you, that battle stinks long before the men return. You felt it in your teeth, in your chest, that greasy air that smelled like old leather and wet dogs, and something sweeter, something like rot just beginning. When the wounded started to come back, you weren't ready. You'd prepared cloth, set out the mead for numbing, but you weren't prepared for the way they screamed, or didn't. Some were silent, faces pale, clutching stumps where hands had been. Some bled without realizing. Some laughed, which was worse. One walked straight into the fire before anyone could stop him. You were told to help, so you did. You wrapped wounds you didn't understand, poured boiling water over tools that still held pieces of someone else, held a man's hand as he bled from the neck and whispered about his wife's hair. You didn't know what to say. You still don't, Stead. The knight returned hours later, blood on his face, laughing. He tossed you his sword. It clanged against your chest. You nearly dropped it. He called you milk-fingered and ordered wine. You scrubbed the blade clean. It was red, then pink, then silver again. You asked if it was a good fight. He shrugged, said the enemy ran. You wondered if they screamed too. That night, you couldn't sleep. The tent smelled like sweat and meat. The groans from the other squires bled through the canvas. One had vomited into his boots. Another kept whispering, "Not me, not me, not me." You lay awake and stared at the shadows. You hadn't fought, but you felt it. The next day they made you burn the bandages. The smoke was black. The wind shifted. You coughed until you saw stars. The knight didn't notice. He was telling a story to a nobleman's son, about how he took down 3 men alone, about how he laughed as their arrows missed, about how his sword sang like thunder. You knew that sword. You'd cleaned it, carried it, kissed the hilt once, when no one was looking. It hadn't sung. It had shaken. You wonder what the knight felt, if anything, if the blood on his gloves clung to his thoughts, or if he could already smell the next feast being prepared in his honor. You don't hate him. Not exactly. You envy him, and pity him, and fear becoming him. Because one day maybe you shall be in that saddle. Maybe you shall ride into smoke and not come back. Maybe you'll kill someone and dream about it forever. Maybe your sword will sing, or maybe it will just fall. You sharpen his blade that evening. It glides against the whetstone like a whisper. You can still smell the iron in it, the blood that didn't come from you but might as well have. You tell yourself it sets preparation, that your turn will come, that next time you shall ride beside him, not behind, but deep down you know your place. The battle will rage, the smoke will rise, and you still be here, watching, cleaning, breathing in the war that wasn't yours. And maybe now, just for tonight, you can fall asleep without hearing the screams, just the silence afterward. Sleep, now. You used to count the days. From the moment you were sworn in, you imagined a number, a fixed, knowable path from Squire to knight, like walking a long road where every blister meant progress, every bruise a sign of getting closer. But somewhere along the way the days blurred, and the road disappeared. And now? Now you just count what you'll never be. You'll never be the knight in shining armor. Not just because the armor doesn't fit, but because it was never made for you. You've polished it for years, piece by piece, until your hands went numb. But when you look at it now, it doesn't look like destiny. It looks like weight. You shall never own a sword that carries your name. You've carried his sword so long it's reshaped your back. You've memorized its balance, cleaned blood from its grooves, rewrapped its handle in the quiet after battle, but it never belonged to you. It never will. The knight once joked you should be buried with it, as if death is the only way you'll get that close. You'll never ride into a tournament, banner snapping in the wind, crowd cheering as your name is called. No crowd will ever know your name. No bard will ever sing about how you survived winter with one boot too small, or how you fought off infection alone in the hayloft because you didn't want to be a burden. No one tells stories about boys who bow. You sell, never have land, or a squire of your own, or a banner stitched with a house you command. You'll never say, I remember what it was like to be in your shoes, because no one will ever ask you how you got here. They'll just assume you didn't, that you stayed where you were put. You think about leaving. Not often, but enough. Walking past the edge of the forest, disappearing into a village where no one knows the word Squire, where you can sleep without armor clinking overhead, where you can speak without being spoken to first. But you never do, because what else would you be? You're not a craftsman, you're not a merchant, you're not anything but this hollow shape of someone else's future. Even the pages have more freedom than you now. They run, they joke, they still play pretend. You don't, you can't, you forgot how. You used to pretend your father would visit, that he'd show up one day in fine clothes, proud and grinning, saying you'd earned your place and it was time to come home. But he never wrote. You don't think he even knows where you are anymore. You used to pretend your knight saw you, that he noticed how quickly you learned, how quiet you stayed, how carefully you kept his secrets. But he doesn't instead. To him you're a tunic that moves, a voice that apologizes, a pair of hands that tighten straps and catch his sword when he throws it. You used to pretend you were becoming something, that all of this was shaping you into a man with purpose. But now you stood not sure. You stir not the knight. You stir not the hero. You stir not even the villain. You're the hand behind the curtain, holding the lance before its throne, the bootstep just outside the hall, the nod in the shadow, the whisper that goes unheard. You shall never become what they promised, because the promise was never real. And still you wake up before the sun, still lace your boots, still polish the armor, still wait for something to change. Because if you don't too, then what was the point of all of it? So you keep moving, keep nodding, keep dreaming small. A fire that doesn't go out in the middle of the night, a meal with enough to feel full, a word of thanks, a moment of peace. And maybe now, just for tonight, you can stop pretending, let the silence speak instead, let the dream dissolve, and sleep. You once did be buried in armor. That's reserved for the knights, for the ones with names carved into stone, for the ones whose swords pass down through generations, whose banners hang in halls even after their bodies rot in the dirt. You shall be buried in whatever sep's left. If you stir buried at all, more likely, they'll toss your body into the woods behind the chapel, beneath the brambles where old servants and nameless dogs are laid to rest. A shallow grave. No cross, no prayers, just earth and forgetting. Because no one remembers the squires. Not after the night dies, not after the stories fade. You were part of his shape, part of his shadow, and when the light moves on, so does everything else. You don't get a legacy, just a trail of worn boots, broken tools and armor you never wore. You think about it sometimes, your death, not in a dramatic way, not with tears or longing, just, practically, like another task on the list, something to prepare for. You imagine a winter fever, or a kick from a horse, or a wound that gets too warm too fast, and no one notices, not until the room starts to smell. They still ask, wasn't there another squire? Someone will shrug, then forget. You think of the bones beneath the floor of the chapel, the ones no one talks about, the ones the mason found last spring while reinforcing the corner wall. Small bones, probably a child's. He said nothing, buried them deeper, went on with his work. You wonder if that child had dreams, if they were yours once. A sword, a name, a story, but there sits no plaque, no carving, no song, just dirt and time. You try to imagine who will find your bones. A page, maybe, 30 years from now, digging a latrine or planting onions. He'll find your skull and think it's a rock at first. He'll lift it, blink, and call someone over. And someone will say, "Oh, just a squire," and drop you back. You used to hope for more. A funeral, a moment of silence, a story told beside a fire. He was loyal, he was strong, he mattered. But you've scrubbed too many bloodstains to believe in that now. The night will live longer than you. He eats better, sleeps softer, wears steel. You wear the bruises of his burdens. And when you're gone, someone else will carry them, someone younger, hungrier, more hopeful. You shall be a cautionary tale. Maybe, more likely, you shall be nothing. You try not to be bitter. After all, you chose this. Did not you? Kneeled, swore the oath, said the words they placed in your mouth. But you didn't know what you were trading. Didn't know how quietly a life could disappear. How a name could be scrubbed from memory like soot from a breastplate. You trace your own ribs in the dark sometimes. Wonder what they'll look like, years from now, stripped clean by worms in time. Will they still curve like they do now? Will they still remember the shape of who you were? Or will they settle into the dirt like stones? Unlabeled, unmourned, unfelt. The night sleeps now. You can hear him through the stone wall, breathing deep, lost in dreams you're not allowed to share. You sit alone by the hearth. The fire is nearly out. The embers whisper like old bones. And maybe now, you can rest too. Maybe this is enough. To have existed, to have served, to have survived, even briefly. And when the wind carries your name away, maybe that step's okay. Maybe silence is the only kind of memory that lasts forever. Sleep now. Fade gently. You have left your mark, even if it disappears by morning. The fire has died. Just the soft hiss of coals now, a red breath beneath blackened wood, pulsing like a heartbeat that's too tired to keep time. The room is quiet. The night sleeps. The servants sleep. Even the horses have stopped their restless stamping. Only you remain awake, curled beside the stone wall where the cold comes through, wrapped in a tunic too thin and a future too quiet. You don't dream of anything now. Not of swords, not of banners, not of glory, not even of food. You dream of absence, the absence of bruises, of orders barked like insults, of boots that must be polished and voices that must be obeyed. You dream of a world where no one remembers your name, not out of cruelty but because there was nothing to forget. That kind of peace feels impossible. And yet, it sets coming. You feel it in your bones, not pain but stillness, the kind that settles in after a storm, the kind that creeps in through the floor, wraps around your chest, and tells you it's okay to stop now. Okay to let go. You've done enough. No one will carve your name into a sword. No statue will bear your likeness. No tapestry will stitch your face into its story. But the stone will remember. The straw that once held your weight will remember. The breeze through the slit in the wall where you watch the moon rise each night, it will remember too. Not in words, not in song, but in silence. In the way the world keeps moving, and yet pauses, briefly, as if it senses something has changed. Something small, something soft, something that mattered once, even if it was never noticed. You think of your hands. The blisters have hardened now, turned to skin that feels more like bark than flesh. You wonder what they'll look like when they're bones. When time has stripped you bare and left only the shape of what you held. Will anyone know you once carried a sword that wasn't yours? That you buckled another man's armor with hands that never trembled? That you whispered oaths even after they stopped being promises? It doesn't matter anymore, because the weight is gone now. The armor lies untouched. The boots you once polished still glisten in the corner, but they no longer ask anything of you. The sword rests in its scabbard like a mouth that is finally closed. Everything is gone quiet. And you? You are fading. Not in pain, not in fear, but in peace. The kind that comes not from victory but from surrender. Not to an enemy, but to the world. To the truth that some lives pass like smoke. And that sep's okay, because not all stories are meant to be told. Some are meant to be felt. like cold stone under tired hands, like the scent of oil and iron, like the quiet ache of a name that was whispered once and never again. So rest now. There are no wolves at the door, no sharp words, no duties waiting in the dark. Yusef survived every sunrise. Yusef bowed to every command. Yusef carried everything that was never yours. And now, you may set it all down. Let the silence take it. Let the cold cradle you. Let the breath you release be the last thing you have to carry. No one remembers your name, but that step's okay. There are no boots to polish, no swords to lift, no voices to obey. Only the hush, only the slow, soft, forgiving hush. Sleep now, sleep forever. You are free.